How do you stay calm when your own family tells you at 32 that you were adopted, then divides $31 million and everything valuable in front of you? Why would they do it on the same day, like they planned the timing, to leave me with nothing and no place to stand? What I learned 2 weeks later from a $200 investigator changed the entire power balance in one phone call. My name is Nolan Pierce. I am 32 years old. I used to think my life was steady. Not perfect, but steady. I worked hard. I stayed polite. I fixed problems before they became public. I did not ask for applause. I thought that was the right way to live inside a strong family. That night at the lakefront mansion, I arrived a little early. The air outside was cold and clean. The driveway lights made the stone path look like a runway. I had been there 1,000 times. I knew where the loose step was near the front porch. I knew which window always had a soft lamp on, even when everyone said they were asleep. I carried a small bag in my right hand. Nothing dramatic. Just a change of clothes and my laptop, because I planned to drive back to my apartment after dinner. I did not think I would stay late. It was a regular family dinner in my mind. My mother liked these dinners. She liked a table full of plates and a room full of quiet agreement. When I entered, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and a sweet candle. The dining room was brighter than usual. The chairs were pushed in perfectly. The table was set in a way that looked more like a business meeting than a meal. Small folders were stacked near each place setting. A few envelopes sat near the center, next to a neat row of pens. I noticed a key ring on the sideboard. It had 3 different car keys attached. They were expensive keys, the kind with heavy metal and polished logos. I told myself it was some kind of planning night. Maybe taxes, maybe a charity event. My mother loved planning events. My siblings loved acting like they carried the whole family name on their shoulders. My father was already seated. He sat straight, hands folded, eyes on the table. He did not look surprised to see me, but he also did not look happy. He looked like someone waiting for weather to pass. My mother stood near the fireplace. She wore one of her formal sweaters and a necklace she usually saved for public events. She had her hair styled like she was about to be photographed. That was a detail I did not understand yet. My siblings were there too. Brielle sat on the left, with her phone face down beside her plate. Vaughn stood near the cabinet, pouring water like he was hosting. Tessa leaned against the wall, smiling at something on her screen, like the world was her stage and this room was just another set. They all looked ready. Not ready for dinner, ready for a decision. I walked in and said hello. I kept my voice even. I asked how everyone was. I did my usual thing. I tried to lower the tension before it rose. My mother did not answer with warmth. She asked me to sit. She said we needed to talk as a family and finish something that should have been finished long ago. I sat down slowly. I put my bag near my chair. I noticed my place setting was at the end of the table, farthest from my father. That was new. I used to sit closer to him. My mother did not start with small talk. She did not ask about work. She did not ask if I was tired. She looked at me with a calm face and said this was a serious meeting. Then she said it. She said I was adopted. The words did not make noise, but they landed hard. For a second, I thought I misheard. I looked at my father, expecting him to correct her. He did not. He kept his eyes down, like the table had become a safe place to stare. My mouth went dry. I tried to keep my face still. I asked her what she meant. I asked if this was some kind of mistake. My mother said there was no mistake. She said they adopted me as a baby. She said it was time I knew. She said she did not want any confusion later. Confusion later. Those 2 words told me everything. This was not about truth. This was about timing. My siblings did not look shocked, not even a little. Brielle looked relieved, like she had been holding her breath for years. Vaughn's eyes narrowed in a way that felt like victory. Tessa smiled without showing teeth, like someone watching a show they already knew the ending to. I tried to speak, but my thoughts ran into each other. I asked why I had never been told. I asked why they waited until now. My mother said I was old enough to handle it. She said the past did not matter as much as the future. She said they gave me a good life, and I should be grateful. Grateful. Another word with a sharp edge. My father finally spoke, but he did not defend me. He said my mother was right, and this was not the night for drama. He said we were here to sort out family matters properly. That was when Vaughn reached for one of the folders and slid it slightly toward my mother as if he was passing her a tool. My mother opened her folder and spoke like she was reading a script she had practiced. She said they were dividing the family estate. She said the company stake, the lakefront property, and other assets were being assigned to the real siblings. Real siblings. She did not say it with anger. She said it like a fact that did not need kindness. The room felt smaller. My shoulders felt heavy. I looked at the folders and the keyring again. The keys made sense now. The folders made sense now. This was not a family dinner. It was a removal. I asked what I was supposed to receive. I asked what they planned for me. My mother said they had already supported me enough. She said I had an education, a job, and a life. She said the estate belonged to her children. I waited for my father to step in. He did not. He looked tired, not guilty, not sad, just tired, like he had accepted this outcome and wanted to get through the night with as little noise as possible. Brielle spoke then. She said it was not personal. She said this was how things needed to be. She said it was better to be honest now than to deal with conflict later. Vaughn added more, like he could not resist. He said I had always been different. He said I did not carry the family bloodline. He said I should understand that the company and property were built for the next generation. I remember that word again. Bloodline. It felt like a wall, not a family term. Tessa looked at me like I was an inconvenient object. Yeah, she said she hoped I would not make this ugly. She said the family had an image to protect. That was the moment I understood the shape of the night. They were not sharing news. They were creating a story. In that story, they were responsible and kind. In that story, I was a grown man who should be thankful and quiet. In that story, if I reacted with pain, I would be the problem. I did not give them what they wanted. I took a slow breath. I kept my hands under the table so no one could see them shake. I asked one more question. I asked why they chose today. My mother looked at me for a long second. Then she said something that did not sound loud, but it was the sharpest thing she had said all night. She said I was never really one of them. She said it like a door closing. After that, the room moved on without me. They started talking about practical things. They discussed who would take which car. They talked about the lakefront property like it was already a shared vacation place, not a home that held my childhood memories. They spoke about the family company in confident tones, like I had never worked there, like I had never solved urgent problems for them behind the curtain. I sat there and listened. I did not interrupt. I watched their faces. I watched how relaxed they were now that the hardest words were out. I watched how my mother's shoulders lowered, like she had completed a task. I noticed little details. I noticed my father kept rubbing the side of his thumb against his ring. I noticed Brielle's foot bounced under the table, like she had extra energy. I noticed Vaughn leaned back with a calm smile, like he had won something important. I noticed Tessa glanced at her phone often, like she was waiting for messages from people outside this house. At some point, a plate of food appeared in front of me. I did not know who placed it there. I did not eat. I stared at it like it belonged to someone else. My mother mentioned that the staff would clear out a guest room soon because they had visitors coming next week. She said it casually, but I heard the message. There was no room for me, not even as a guest. The meeting ended without a formal ending. My mother stood up first. She said we were done. She said she hoped I would be respectful and mature about it. My siblings started gathering their things. Brielle picked up her phone and smiled again, like she could finally breathe. Vaughn grabbed one of the folders and tucked it under his arm with care. Tessa walked past me and lightly tapped the back of my chair like she was patting an object in the room. My father did not hug me. He did not follow me to the door. He stayed seated for a moment, then stood and walked toward the hallway without looking at me again. I walked out of the dining room with my bag in my hand. My legs felt stable, but my chest felt tight. I did not cry. Not because I was strong, because my mind was still trying to accept that my entire place in their world could be canceled in one evening. At the front door, I paused. I looked back once. My mother was already speaking softly to Vaughn in the living room. Brielle and Tessa were laughing about something small, like they were on their way to a party. My father's footsteps faded down the hall. Outside, the night air hit my face and woke me up. The driveway lights were still bright. The stone fountain made a quiet sound that felt too normal for what had just happened. I set my bag down beside me and took out my phone. I wanted to call someone. I did not even know who. I just wanted to hear a human voice that did not treat me like a mistake. My phone showed no signal, no service. It was strange. The mansion usually had perfect coverage. I walked a few steps down the driveway, turning the phone in my hand like that would help. Still nothing. I looked back at the house. The dining room window glowed. The curtains were half open. For a second, I imagined them watching me from inside, waiting to see if I would fall apart on the driveway. I refused to give them that scene. I picked up my bag and started walking toward my car. It was parked near the fountain. I reached into my pocket for my keys and felt a strange emptiness. I checked again. The keys were not there. I stood still. My thoughts moved slowly, as if they were wading through thick water. I remembered placing my keys on the entry table when I came in. I always did that. It was a habit. My mother liked a clean entryway. I walked back to the front door and pulled on the handle. It did not open. I tried again, harder. The lock did not move. I stepped back and stared at the door like it had turned into something else. A barrier. A line. I knocked once, then twice. No one opened. I heard movement inside, but no footsteps came toward the door. I kept my posture calm. I stood straight. I did not pound. I did not shout. I understood the message. This was part of the plan. They had controlled the room. Now they controlled the exit. I turned away and walked back down the driveway, my bag feeling heavier with every step. Near my car, my phone suddenly buzzed. The screen lit up with a notification, like the world had been waiting until I crossed an invisible boundary. The reminder on the screen was short. It showed a date and a simple line. Remember what you helped build. I stared at it for a long time. My hands were steady now, not because the pain was gone, but because something else had taken its place. Clarity. I looked at the mansion one last time, then at the dark water beyond it. I did not know who I was in their story anymore, but I knew one thing. I was done asking for a seat at a table that had never been mine by their rules. I drove away from the mansion with my bag on the passenger seat and my hands tight on the wheel. The road around the lake was quiet. The water looked like a sheet of glass under the streetlights. I kept telling myself to breathe like a normal person. I told myself I would go home, sleep, wake up, and handle work like I always did. I thought work would be the one place where rules were clear. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. My apartment felt too small, like the walls were closer than usual. I made coffee and stared at the steam. My phone sat on the counter like a heavy object. I did not want to look at it, but I did. There were messages in the family group chat. They were short and polite. My mother wrote that she hoped I got home safe and that she trusted I would act with dignity. Brielle sent a heart emoji. Vaughn wrote that he would speak to me later when things were calmer. Tessa wrote that she hoped I would not make the family look bad. No one asked how I felt. No one said they were sorry. The words were all about control. I got dressed for the office the same way I always did. Plain shirt, clean shoes, simple watch. I told myself that routine was a kind of anchor. At the family company, I had a steady role. I was not the face of anything, but I was the person people called when something broke. I managed operations. I handled vendors. I solved the problems that did not look pretty on a stage. That job had been part of my life for a long time. When I was younger, my father liked to tell people I was hardworking. He would say I had a good head on my shoulders. But even then, the praise had a certain shape. It always sounded like I was useful, not important. Growing up, I saw the difference, even when I did not have words for it. When Brielle did well in school, my mother would throw a dinner and invite people. When Vaughn won something, my father would talk about leadership. When Tessa posted a picture online, my mother would say the family looked elegant. When I did well, my mother would say it was good that I stayed busy. She would say it kept me out of trouble. I learned early that I should not ask too many questions. If I asked about my place in the family, my mother would say I was being dramatic. If I asked why Vaughn had a say in company meetings and I did not, my father would say I should focus on doing my job well. The message was always the same: be steady, be grateful, do not demand. When I was 21, I started working full-time in the company. It felt like the natural path. The company was a part of our family story, and I wanted to belong to that story. I stayed late. I took weekend calls. I fixed messes without pointing fingers. People started to trust me because I kept my tone calm even when others panicked. There were moments that should have warned me. I remember a time when a major vendor was ready to leave because of late payments. I stayed in my office until midnight, called the right people, and got it resolved. The next week, my father thanked Vaughn in a meeting for stabilizing relationships. Vaughn smiled and nodded. No one corrected the credit. I told myself it did not matter as long as the work was done. I told myself I was not the type to chase praise. But the pattern repeated. I helped build systems that saved money. I trained teams. I took the hardest calls. I quietly carried weight. And still, I was introduced in public as someone who helped out. Brielle was introduced as the heart. Vaughn was introduced as the future. Tessa was introduced as the brand. I was introduced like a support tool. After the mansion night, those old memories came back with a sharper meaning. I realized they had been preparing this story for years. The adoption reveal was not just a surprise. It was a final step in a long plan. I pulled into the company parking lot that morning and sat in the car for a minute. I watched other employees walk in with coffee and backpacks. I watched the security guard nod at people he recognized. I told myself to go in like normal. I told myself I would not let one night change how I carried myself. I walked to the main entrance. The lobby was wide and bright. The company logo was on the wall, polished and expensive. The place always smelled like fresh air and floor cleaner. I stepped up to the gate and held my badge to the scanner. The light stayed red. I tried again, slower, red again. I looked at the screen and felt a slow heat rise in my face. It was not anger. It was that feeling of being watched. I could sense people behind me in line, waiting. The security guard walked over. His face looked uncomfortable, like he did not want to be there for this moment. He asked if the badge was mine. I said yes. He asked for my name. I gave it. He typed something into his computer. His shoulders shifted slightly, as if he had found what he expected. He told me there was a note on my file. He said I needed to check in with HR before entering the building. He said it in a careful, professional voice, like a person reading a rule he did not create. I nodded and said I understood. I did not argue. Arguing in a lobby only helps the people who want you to look unstable. HR was on the second floor. I walked up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. I wanted space to think. On the way, I passed familiar faces. Some people looked away. Some offered a quick, stiff smile. One coworker started to say hello, then stopped as if someone had told him not to. In the HR hallway, the carpet was softer and quieter. The walls had framed posters about culture and values. I sat in a chair outside the office and waited. My hands were calm in my lap. My chest felt tight, but my face stayed neutral. An HR manager came out and called my name. She was polite, but the politeness felt like a shield. Inside the office, she offered me a chair and closed the door. She said there had been a change in my status. She said it was not personal. She said the company was adjusting roles to align with leadership needs. I asked what that meant. I asked if I was being fired. She said she could not use that word yet. She said there would be a transition conversation soon. She said I should wait for an email with details. She said I could not access internal systems until the transition was complete. She said I could collect personal items later with supervision if needed. Supervision. Another sharp word. I asked who ordered the change. She said it came from executive leadership. She did not say Vaughn's name, but she did not need to. In that building, executive leadership meant the people who shared my last name. I left HR without raising my voice. In the hallway, I stopped at a window and looked down at the parking lot. My car looked small from that height. The building looked too clean for the kind of quiet cruelty happening inside it. I walked back down to the lobby. I heard a group of employees whispering near the coffee station. One of them said something about me not being part of the family anymore. Another said something about a long time coming. I did not turn toward them. I did not confront them. I let the words pass through me like cold air. The goal was not to win a hallway argument. The goal was to understand the new reality. Outside, I sat in my car again and stared forward. I thought about the timing, the mansion dinner, the folders, the keys, the locked door, the badge. It was not random. It was a coordinated push. They were removing me from every place where I had standing, home and work, both in one motion. I drove to a small cafe I sometimes used for quiet work. It was not fancy. It had worn wooden tables and a soft hum of music. I sat in the corner with my coffee and opened my laptop. I did not log into company systems. I already knew I could not. Instead, I opened a blank document and started writing a timeline. I wrote the date of the mansion dinner. I wrote what was said as calmly as I could. I wrote who was present and what each person did. I wrote the next morning, the badge, the HR meeting. I did not add emotion words. I wrote it like a report. As I typed, I remembered other moments that now felt different. I remembered my mother discouraging me from learning too much about family finances. I remembered my father telling me to let Vaughn handle certain meetings. I remembered being left out of group photos sometimes, then being told it was an accident. I remembered my name missing from a company press release after I led a project that saved a major contract. Back then, I told myself it was nothing. Now, it looked like a pattern of soft erasing. My phone buzzed again. It was the family group chat. My mother wrote a message saying the company would host a unity event soon and that it would be good for everyone to show support. She wrote that the family would be present and that leadership would speak about legacy and values. Legacy, values, unity. It sounded like a performance planned for an audience. Vaughn followed with a short message. He said I should not do anything that would force hard steps. He said it was better if I accepted the transition quietly. He said it would be best for me if I stayed calm and cooperative. I stared at the screen. My fingers did not move for a moment. I felt something settle inside me. Not rage, not panic, just a clear understanding that kindness was not part of their plan. They were not asking me to heal, they were asking me to disappear without noise. I closed the chat without replying. I took a slow sip of coffee. I looked at my timeline document again and added one more line at the bottom. I wrote that the pressure was now public and professional, not just personal. I wrote that the next steps had to be careful and lawful. I wrote that I would not fight with words. I would respond with facts. 2 days after the mansion dinner, an envelope showed up at my apartment door. It was thick, clean, and official-looking. No return address. Just my name in printed letters. The paper felt expensive. Even the tape looked careful, like someone wanted the delivery to feel final. I carried it inside and set it on my kitchen table. I did not open it right away. I made tea first. I stood by the sink and watched the water boil. My hands were steady, but my mind felt busy. I kept thinking about the locked front door at the mansion and my badge turning red at the office gate. I kept thinking about how quiet it all was. No yelling, no big scene, just doors closing one by one. When I finally opened the envelope, I did it slowly. Inside were more papers than I expected. A cover letter sat on top. The letter used friendly words, but the meaning was cold. It said the family wanted a clean separation. It said I would be offered a small support package if I signed quickly. It said I would agree to stop making claims, stop speaking publicly, and stop contacting certain people. I read it twice. Then I set it down and stared at my wall for a long time. I did not feel shock anymore. I felt something else. I felt like I was watching a machine work. They were not reacting to my feelings. They were following steps. Step 1 was the reveal. Step 2 was the lockout. Step 3 was paperwork. My phone buzzed, and I already knew who it would be. It was Vaughn. He did not ask if I received the envelope. He spoke like he knew I did. He said this was the reasonable path. He said I could take the offer and move on. He said it was better to accept it now than to cause trouble for myself later. I asked him one question. I asked why they were so rushed. He said they wanted closure. He said it was best for the company. He said it was best for the family name. Family name. Again. I told him I understood he wanted it clean. I told him I would read everything carefully. I did not promise anything. I kept my tone flat. Vaughn did not like that. I could hear it in his silence. Then he said my mother was being generous and that I should not push my luck. I ended the call without arguing. I did not want my voice to give them any material. That afternoon, I drove to the company building again, not to go inside, but to see how far their control reached. I parked across the street and watched the front entrance. Employees came and went. Security stood straighter than usual. The lobby looked normal through the glass, but I could feel the shift in the air even from outside. My phone buzzed with an email from HR. The subject line said, "Transition meeting." The message said there would be a short meeting later in the week. It said I should attend to discuss next steps. It did not say where. It did not say who would be present. It used calm words, but the structure felt like a trap. I forwarded the email to my personal account and took a screenshot. Then I created a folder on my laptop labeled by date. I started putting everything into it: messages, emails, notes, small things that become big when they line up. I drove back to the cafe near downtown, the same worn wooden table, the same quiet music. I opened my timeline document and added the envelope and Vaughn's call. I wrote down the exact phrases he used. Not because I wanted to punish him with words, but because I knew words matter when people pretend they never said them. As I typed, I kept remembering small moments from my life that I had brushed off before. I remembered being asked to leave a family photo once because the photographer wanted just the kids. I remembered my mother saying it was for symmetry. I remembered the way Brielle would introduce me at events, saying I worked at the company like a helper. I remembered the way Vaughn would call me late at night to fix a problem, then act like it was not important when it was solved. I remembered the way my father would say he was proud of me, but only in private, never in the rooms where it counted. Those memories used to feel like minor cuts. Now they felt like a map. While I was sitting there, I noticed a new message appear in the family group chat. It was from my mother. She said she had always cared for me. She said the family wanted peace. She said she hoped I would not embarrass anyone. She said the upcoming Unity event would show the community that the family was strong and responsible. It was not a message to me. It was a message about me, designed for others. I did not reply. I turned my phone face down and kept typing. Later that night, I received another call, this time from Brielle. She sounded gentle in the way people sound when they want something but do not want to sound like they want it. She said she was worried about me. She said the family was under stress. She said I should think carefully before making choices that could hurt everyone. I asked what choice she meant. She said the envelope offer was fair and I should sign it. She said it would help me start fresh. She said this was the most respectful outcome. Respectful. They use that word like a blanket to cover a sharp object. I told Brielle I heard her. I told her I needed time. She paused, then said something that made my stomach tighten. She said people were already talking and that I did not want to look unstable. That word again, unstable. It was their favorite label for anyone who refused to stay quiet. When I ended the call, I did not pace. I did not slam doors. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the envelope papers again. I noticed how the cover letter kept using soft words while asking me to give up my voice. I noticed how the offer amount was small, especially for a family that claimed to have a huge estate. Then I noticed another thing. The letter assumed I had no way to fight back. It assumed I had no proof of anything. It assumed I would be grateful for scraps and frightened of the family name. That was the moment the switch happened for me. Not anger, not revenge thoughts, just clarity. If they were moving like a machine, then I had to move like a machine too. I had to stop looking for warmth in a room built for cold decisions. I had to stop treating this like a personal argument and start treating it like a process. I opened my laptop again. I created more folders, one for home, one for work, one for messages, one for timeline. I started listing witnesses in my head, the security guard, the HR manager, the coworkers who heard the whispers. I kept it simple, names, dates, places. Then I made another list, separate from the others. I titled it Unknowns. It had one big question at the top. Who am I really, and what did they hide? I sat with that question for a long time. My mother said I was adopted. She said it like it was nothing. But adoption is not nothing. There are records, there are names, there is a story behind it. And if they waited 32 years to tell me, they did not do it to help me. They did it to protect themselves. That same night, I searched for a private investigator online. Not the flashy kind. Not the kind who promises drama. I wanted someone quiet. Someone who could pull records, check timelines, and tell me what is real. I did not have a huge budget. I did not need a movie. I needed facts. I found Owen Cade. His website was simple. No big claims. Just a short list of services and a phone number. I called and told him I needed help finding my biological parents. I kept my voice calm. I told him I had just learned I was adopted. I told him I wanted answers without chaos. Owen asked basic questions. He asked my full name, date of birth, and the city where I was born. He asked if I had any paperwork. I said I did not, but I had a timeline and some family details. He said that was enough to start. He told me his basic fee for an initial search was $200. The number felt almost strange. My family had a mansion by the lake, 3 luxury cars, and a company that held contracts I helped maintain. Yet the first serious step toward truth cost $200. I agreed. I sent the payment. Owen told me he would call in a few days with what he could find. He said not every search ends with a clear answer, but most secrets leave footprints. After that call, I slept better than I had since the mansion dinner. Not because I felt safe, but because I had direction. The next day at noon, I received a message from HR confirming the transition meeting date. It was set for the end of the week. I added it to my calendar. I did not respond with emotion. I simply replied that I would attend. That afternoon, my mother called me directly. Her tone was soft, almost warm, like she was trying a new mask. She said she wanted to speak as a mother. She said she hoped I was taking care of myself. Then she shifted. She said the envelope offer would not stay open forever. She said it would be unwise to delay. I asked her why she locked the door that night. There was a pause. Then she said I was imagining things. She said the staff must have secured the house early. She said she did not want me driving upset. She said she was protecting me, protecting. Another soft word used like a cover. I did not argue. I told her I understood her position. I told her I was handling things properly and I would not rush. My mother's voice tightened. She said I should remember where I came from. She said I should not bite the hand that raised me. When the call ended, I sat quietly for a minute. Then I wrote down her phrases in my notes. 3 days later, I met Owen at the same downtown cafe. He arrived on time and sat across from me with a small notebook. He did not act impressed by my family name. He did not act sorry for me either. He acted focused. He told me he had already found inconsistencies in the public trail. He said there were gaps where there should not be gaps. He said he needed a little more time to confirm the origin story. He said he could not promise a clean answer, but he could promise he would not guess. I nodded and told him to continue. I told him I did not want rumors. I wanted verified truth. When I left the cafe that day, my phone buzzed with another family group chat message. It was a photo of the hotel ballroom stage for the upcoming Unity event. My family name was already on the screen behind the microphone. I looked at the photo and felt that same calm clarity settle deeper. They wanted a stage. They wanted control. They wanted me to stay quiet. I started walking back to my car, holding my phone in one hand and my bag in the other, and I told myself one simple sentence in my head. If they respect stages, then I will answer in the place they cannot ignore. The week after I hired Owen, my days started to look the same. I woke up early, I made coffee, I checked my phone once, then set it face down. I did not want my family's messages to be the first thing in my head. I wanted my own thoughts first. I kept going to the downtown cafe because it felt neutral. No family photos on the walls, no company logo, just quiet tables and people who did not know my story. I brought my laptop and a small notebook. I kept everything simple: dates, names, places, short phrases. Nothing dramatic. Just a clean record. Owen called me midweek and said he had confirmed enough to take the next step carefully. He did not give me details on the phone. He said he preferred to speak in person when information could change lives. He said he wanted me to hear it correctly, not through a rushed call. I told him I understood and asked when he could meet. We agreed on the following afternoon. Before that meeting, HR finally sent a location for the transition meeting. It was not in the main HR office. It was in a small conference room near the back of the building, the kind of room used for quiet topics. The email repeated that I should come alone and arrive on time. It also repeated that I still could not access company systems. I replied with a short message saying I would attend. Then I saved the email. I took a screenshot. I added it to my folder. I did not do it because I wanted a fight. I did it because I had learned that people who control narratives also control memory. If I did not keep records, they would later claim I misunderstood. That same day, my mother sent another group message about the Unity event. She said the community expected to see a strong family. She said the company's partners would be present. She said it would be nice if I came and showed maturity. She framed it like a warm invitation. But the timing and the wording made it feel like a trap. I did not respond. I kept a new rule for myself. If a message was designed to pull emotion out of me, I would not feed it. Instead, I called the bank branch where I had my personal account. I asked to speak to Priya Dahan, the officer who had helped me once when I was younger. Priya had a way of talking that made things feel clear. She did not gossip. She did not lean into drama. She asked for facts and then explained processes. Priya agreed to meet me in a small conference room the next morning. When I arrived, she greeted me politely and sat across the table with a notepad. She asked what I needed. I told her I wanted to separate my personal finances from any family connections. I told her my family and the company were creating pressure, and I wanted clean boundaries. Priya listened without reacting. Then she asked a few careful questions. She asked whether my accounts had any shared access. She asked whether any payments were tied to company systems. She asked whether I had any co-signed agreements from the past. I told her I was not sure about everything. I told her my father handled many family structures, and I had not been included in details. Priya said that uncertainty was exactly why I needed to move methodically. She said people often wait too long to create clean lines. She said I should assume nothing and verify everything. She also said that if I wanted to protect myself, I should keep communication in writing whenever possible. I nodded and took notes. I did not ask her to fight my family. I asked her to help me create a stable personal foundation. That felt like the first step that belonged to me, not to them. After the bank, I went home and reorganized my apartment. Not in a dramatic way, just small changes. I moved my laptop setup to the kitchen table where the light was better. I put a small box near my chair with labeled folders inside. I plugged in an external drive and set it in a drawer. I turned on automatic backups. I knew this might become more than an emotional issue. I knew it might become a process that required order. That afternoon, I met Owen again at the cafe. He arrived on time and sat down with the same calm energy. He told me he had traced my early records through public sources and cross-checks. He said there were signs of deliberate privacy, not just normal adoption privacy. He said certain items did not appear where they usually would. He said that did not prove wrongdoing, but it did suggest careful control. I asked him what he meant by control. Owen said he had found a name connected to my origin story that did not match what a normal family narrative would expect. He said it was a name with public weight. He said if the connection was real, my family's decision to hide it for 32 years was not just emotional, it was strategic. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face calm. I asked him what he needed next. Owen said he needed confirmation through formal channels. He said he could point me toward the right steps, but he could not replace legal guidance. He said if I wanted to move carefully, I should speak to an attorney who understood both family structures and corporate consequences. That was not a surprise. I had already been thinking about it. The company and the estate were tied together in too many ways. If my family was moving pieces around, then I needed someone who could read the board, not just the emotions. That night, I called Lena Crowell. I got her name from a quiet contact in my professional network, someone who had once told me Lena was serious and procedural. Lena's office assistant scheduled me for an initial consultation 2 days later. When I walked into Lena's office, the place felt calm and focused. No loud art, no heavy perfume, just clean walls, quiet lighting, and a receptionist who treated me like a normal client. That mattered. I did not want pity. I wanted competence. Lena met me in a small conference room. She asked me to explain what happened from the beginning. I started with the mansion dinner. I described the folders, the keys, the timing, and the way my mother framed the adoption reveal. I described my siblings' reactions. I described the locked door and the missing keys. I described the badge failure and the HR meeting. I kept my words simple. I did not add emotional labels. Lena took notes and asked short questions. She asked who was present. She asked what was said. She asked about my role at the company and whether I had any written agreements. She asked about the Unity event and who would attend. When I mentioned the investigator and the hint of a high-profile biological connection, Lena's posture changed slightly. She did not look excited. She looked cautious in a professional way. She said that names with public weight often come with strong systems around them. She said that could work against me or for me, depending on how clean the facts were. I asked what she recommended. Lena said she could not advise action without confirming specific details. She said the first goal was to preserve information and avoid mistakes. She said I should not sign anything from my family. She said I should avoid emotional replies in group chats. She said I should keep my routine stable and let the process build. She also said something that stayed with me. She said people who stage public events care deeply about reputation, and reputation often responds to procedure more than noise. I understood what she meant. My family wanted a stage where they controlled the story. Lena was saying that procedure could take the stage away from them. I left her office feeling tired, but steadier. The next day was my HR transition meeting. I arrived early and waited outside the conference room. When they opened the door, 2 people were inside, the HR manager from before and another person I had not met, someone with a neutral expression and a laptop. They spoke in careful phrases. They said the company was restructuring. They said my position was being eliminated. They said they would offer a transition package. They said I would need to sign acknowledgments. They said there were expectations about confidentiality and public statements. I listened without reacting. I asked for time to review everything properly. I asked for a copy to take with me. They said they would send it by email. I nodded and ended the meeting politely. I did not beg. I did not threaten. I simply told them I would respond through proper channels. Back in my car, I sat for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel. The feeling was not panic, it was confirmation. The family was removing me from the company at the same time they removed me from the estate. They were closing doors in a synchronized way. That evening, my phone lit up with more group chat messages. Brielle wrote that she heard about the restructuring and hoped I was handling it well. Vaughn wrote that this was the natural outcome and that I should take the transition offer while it was available. Tessa wrote that people were watching and that I should not create a scene at the Unity event. They were all saying the same thing in different tones. They wanted me to accept a small box they built for me and stay inside it. I did not answer. I forwarded the HR email when it arrived. I saved it. I filed it. I added the new details to my timeline. Then I did something small that felt important. I wrote down a personal rule on a sticky note and placed it beside my laptop. I wrote that I would not chase their approval anymore. I wrote that I would act through systems, not feelings. Over the next few days, I kept positioning quietly. I updated my resume. I contacted 2 professional references and asked if I could list them. I reached out to a former vendor contact and asked if he could confirm a few dates about projects I led. I did not tell him my whole story. I kept it professional. I just wanted verification of facts. Owen called again near the end of the week. He said he was close to confirming the name connection he had warned me about. He said it was bigger than I expected. He said he needed me to stay calm because people with resources move fast when they feel risk. I told him I was calm. I meant it. That night, I received the official invitation for the Unity event. It came by email and also as a printed card in the mail. The card was glossy and expensive. It listed sponsors and a schedule. It listed my family members as hosts. It talked about legacy, community, and leadership. I set the card on my kitchen table and looked at it for a long time. The event was not just a dinner. It was a public performance meant to lock the story into the community's mind. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my folders one more time. Everything was in place. Dates, messages, meeting notes, and the pattern that connected them. I did not know exactly how the next stage would unfold, but I knew the direction. My family thought the Unity event would be their victory lap. They thought the spotlight would protect them. I looked at the invitation again and felt that same quiet clarity. If they wanted a stage, then the stage would be where the truth finally had room to stand. The days leading up to the Unity event felt strangely quiet, like the world was holding its breath. My family was loud in public, but the pressure they applied to me came in soft, controlled waves. A message here, a polite email there, an invitation that looked friendly on the surface and sharp underneath. I kept my routine simple. I woke up early, I made coffee, I reviewed my timeline notes without adding emotion words. I ate small meals even when I did not feel hungry. I went for walks so my body would not carry all the tension into my sleep. I told myself that calm was not weakness, calm was control. Lena asked me to come to her office twice that week. The first time, she sat across from me with a quiet focus and said we needed to prepare for how public people behave when their image feels threatened. She said my job was not to argue with them. She said my job was to stay clean, precise, and consistent. She said I would not be the loudest person in the room, and I did not need to be. I told her I could do that. I told her I did not want a messy fight. I told her I wanted a lawful outcome. She said that was the right attitude, and she reminded me again not to sign anything from my family or the company without her review. She said offers that look generous are often designed to limit future options. She said time pressure is a common tactic. She said I should not confuse urgency with importance. After that meeting, I went to the bank again to see Priya. I did not go there to ask for favors. I went to verify boundaries. Priya reviewed a few items with me, and she asked careful questions in a calm voice. She said I was doing the right thing by separating my personal stability from family systems. She said that when powerful families move money and titles, they often assume the person they are removing will be too tired to follow the trail. I told her I was not tired, not in that way. Priya gave me a look that felt like respect without drama. She said she could not fight my battles for me, but she could make sure my own ground was solid. She told me to keep my records organized and to avoid emotional statements in writing. She said calm writing is harder to twist. That evening, Owen called. His voice sounded different than before. It was not excited, and it was not scared. It was cautious, like he was holding something heavy with both hands. He said he had confirmed the name connection he hinted at. He said it was not a rumor. He said it was linked through a trail that was consistent, not loose. I asked him what the next step was. Owen said the next step was not on the phone. He said he would deliver the full summary directly to Lena, and he said I should let my attorney decide how and when to use it. He said people connected to that name have teams that protect reputation as a full-time job. He said it could work in my favor if handled properly, but it could also invite pressure if handled carelessly. I told him I understood. I thanked him. I did not ask for the name again. I already knew it would land harder in the right setting. After the call, I sat in my kitchen with the lights off, letting the quiet settle. I did not feel joy. I did not feel relief. I felt something more steady than both. I felt like the ground under my feet finally had a clear shape. The next day, HR emailed the transition package they promised. I did not open it on my phone. I forwarded it to Lena's office email and saved it to my folder without reading the details. I did not want my emotions to lead. I wanted procedure to lead. An hour later, Vaughn called me again. He spoke in a calm, confident tone, like a person used to getting his way. He said he heard I was talking to professionals. He said that was unnecessary. He said the family wanted to help me land smoothly, and he did not want me to misread their intentions. I asked him one question. I asked why they were inviting me to the Unity event, if they wanted a clean separation. Vaughn said appearances mattered. He said the community liked closure. He said it would show everyone that the family handled difficult things with dignity. He said my presence would help. I told him I understood. I told him I would think about it. I did not commit to anything. Vaughn paused, then said, I should remember that the company world is small and reputations last. I ended the call without a reaction. Then I wrote down his exact phrase about reputations. Not because I wanted to quote him for revenge, but because I wanted a clear record of the pressure. Later that day, Brielle sent me a separate message, not in the group chat. She said she hoped I was doing okay. She said she remembered good moments from childhood and did not want things to end bitterly. She said the Unity event would be a good chance for me to show everyone I was still part of the family story, even if things changed. I stared at her words for a long time. Brielle had always been good at soft language. She could say something sharp using warm packaging. Her message sounded caring, but it also carried a hidden instruction. Keep smiling while we remove you. I did not answer. I filed it. 2 nights before the event, Lena asked me to meet her at a notary's office. She did not explain details in the message. She just said it mattered that everything was executed cleanly and on time. I arrived early and sat in a small waiting area with beige walls and a quiet clock. The room smelled like paper and coffee. When Lena arrived, she greeted me professionally and asked if I slept. I said I did enough. She nodded and said we would keep everything simple. She said my job was to read carefully, sign only when she told me it was appropriate, and avoid discussing it with anyone outside her office. We went into a small room with a desk and 2 chairs. The notary checked identification and spoke in a neutral tone. The process was slow and precise. I signed where Lena pointed. I initialed where she indicated. I did not read anything out loud. I did not ask dramatic questions. I trusted the structure we had already built. When it was done, Lena gathered the papers and placed them into a folder. She did not hand it to me. She kept it close, like a professional holding a tool that needed to be handled carefully. On the way out, she told me again that the next phase would likely happen in public. She said public does not mean loud. She said public means recorded. She said recorded means people behave differently. I asked her what I should do if my family tried to provoke me at the event. Lena said I should not defend myself in emotional language. She said I should not take the bait of personal arguments. She said I should keep my sentences short and calm and let the process land without me performing. I drove home afterward and noticed my hands were not shaking. That surprised me. A month earlier, I would have been overwhelmed by the idea of anything official. Now it felt like I was simply moving through steps. That night, my mother called. Her voice was smooth, almost gentle. She said she was proud of how calm I was being. She said she hoped I was not listening to people who might fill my head with ideas. She said she wanted peace and closure. She said she wanted to look at me at the Unity event and feel that everything ended in a respectful way. I asked her one question. I asked why she told me about the adoption in a room full of folders and keys. My mother laughed softly, like I had said something silly. She said I was imagining drama. She said it was just a family meeting. She said I always had a tendency to overthink. I let her finish. Then I said I understood her view. I said I would handle everything properly. I said I would not rush or react. Her tone shifted slightly. She said the family had always been generous. She said I should not forget that. She said she did not want to be forced to take a harder line. I ended the call calmly. I wrote down the phrase, harder line. Then I turned my phone off for the rest of the night. The day of the Unity event, I woke up before sunrise. My apartment was silent. The city outside was still dark. I stood in front of my closet and chose a plain suit. Not flashy, not expensive looking, clean and simple. I wanted my appearance to match my voice, calm and controlled. I ate a small breakfast. I drank water. I checked my calendar once. Then I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the printed invitation again. The glossy card was designed to show power. Sponsor logos. Program schedule. My family listed as hosts. It was a stage built to reinforce a story. I held the card for a moment, then set it down. I opened my laptop and checked my folders one more time. Everything was organized by date. Messages saved, emails filed, notes labeled, nothing messy, nothing exaggerated. I did not carry any paper stack with me. I did not want to look like I came to fight. I wanted to look like I came to listen. Before I left, I stood in my living room and took one slow breath. I told myself one simple truth. They had spent years assuming I would accept whatever role they assigned me. That assumption was their weakness, not mine. I drove to the hotel in steady traffic. The building was large and polished, the kind of place chosen to impress donors and partners. I parked in the garage beneath it and sat in my car for a moment, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. My hands rested on the steering wheel. My face was neutral. My mind was clear. I walked from the garage to the elevator and rode up in silence with strangers. In the hotel lobby, I saw staff moving quickly, arranging signs and checking lists. The air smelled like fresh flowers and clean fabric. People in formal clothes gathered in small groups, smiling, touching shoulders, taking photos. Across the lobby, I saw my siblings near a sponsor wall. Brielle stood with perfect posture. Vaughn spoke to a man in a suit with the confident smile he used when cameras were nearby. Tessa held her phone up, adjusting angles, capturing the best version of the moment. My mother stood slightly apart, like a director watching her set. No one noticed me right away. That was fine. I did not come to be noticed at the door. I adjusted my jacket, kept my shoulders relaxed, and walked toward the ballroom entrance at an even pace, as if I belonged there the same way I always had. I walked into the ballroom like a normal guest. I did not rush. I did not look around for approval. I found a seat where I could be seen, but not centered. The room was full of polished smiles and quiet competition. The stage lights were bright. The sponsor wall near the entrance looked like a billboard of money and influence. My family moved through the crowd like they owned the air. The program started with music and a warm voice from the host. Then my mother stepped on stage. She spoke about legacy, community, and values. She spoke about how families stay strong when they stay united. People nodded and smiled. My siblings sat in the front row with practiced faces. Vaughn looked relaxed, like the night was built for him. Brielle smiled at donors. Tessa held her phone low, recording small clips for later. When my mother started speaking about the future of the company, Lena stood up beside our table. She did not look angry. She looked procedural. She walked toward the aisle and asked an event staff member to bring the company counsel to the side of the stage. The staff member hesitated, then complied. I saw Everett Sloan, the company counsel, turn his head and stiffen, like he knew something serious was happening. A moment later, the music stopped. The microphone was still live, but my mother's speech paused. The host leaned toward her with a confused smile. Lena spoke quietly to the host and to Everett. She did not raise her voice. She handed Everett a sealed packet and asked him to confirm receipt in front of witnesses. Everett looked at the packet, then nodded once. He stepped closer to the host and said there were legal notices that required immediate acknowledgement. His tone sounded neutral, but the room felt different. My mother tried to regain control. She told the host it was a misunderstanding and said the program should continue. Everett did not agree. He said the notices involved governance, ownership, and public risk. He said the company board had been notified and would require an emergency session under the bylaws. People in the room stopped smiling. Several sponsors shifted in their seats. A few phones rose higher, recording openly now. Then Lena asked Everett to state, in simple terms, what the packet covered. Everett said it included formal objections to recent transfers and attempted removals. He said it included evidence of coordinated actions taken against me after a private family meeting. He said it included documentation related to my identity that the company and estate planners could not ignore without exposure. My mother's face tightened. Vaughn stood up slightly, then sat back down, like he could not decide whether to fight or disappear. Brielle looked toward me for the first time all night, her smile gone. Tessa stopped recording and stared at the stage. Lena then introduced Owen Cade by roll only, without drama. Owen stood near the aisle and confirmed he had conducted a paid investigation into my origin records. He said he followed verified trails, not rumors. He said he found a consistent record chain showing my adoption had been handled with unusual secrecy and deliberate control. He said the reason for that secrecy was now confirmed through formal sources. He said my biological father was Grant Ashford. The name moved through the room like a strong current. I saw people recognize it before they spoke. A sponsor representative leaned toward another and whispered quickly. Two executives near the back stepped away from their table and checked their phones. Even the event staff looked suddenly careful, like they wanted no mistakes on camera. Everett took a breath and said the packet included a letter of representation from Grant Ashford's office. He said it confirmed acknowledgement of paternity and stated there would be immediate legal review of any actions taken to erase or silence me. He said the letter also requested preservation of records from the company and estate planners, including communications tied to my removal. He said this was not a private family argument anymore. He said it was now a matter of compliance and risk management. My mother tried to speak again, but her voice did not carry the room. The host looked at Everett like he wanted guidance. Everett said the event should pause. He said the board would convene at once, and he advised the leadership team to avoid further public statements until council approved them. A sponsor representative stood and quietly told my mother they were withdrawing their name from the screen until the situation was clarified. Another sponsor followed, then another. The sponsor wall behind the stage changed as staff removed digital logos one by one. Vaughn stood up fully this time and spoke toward Everett, but Everett did not engage in a debate. He said Vaughn was instructed to step away from leadership duties until the board reviewed the notices. He said access changes were being reversed pending investigation. Brielle looked like she wanted to leave. Tessa's phone stayed in her hand, but she did not record anymore. I did not stand. I did not point at anyone. I stayed seated and watched procedure do what emotion never could. My mother looked out at the room and saw that her stage was no longer hers. The screen behind her went darker as more sponsor names disappeared. When Everett confirmed receipt of the final acknowledgement in writing, I stood calmly, adjusted my jacket, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard chairs move and phones ring. I did not turn around. I pushed through the ballroom doors, and the sound of the event fell away like a curtain dropping.